Okay, so here's our nuke that we were following. We followed it through 1 year. Now we're in our second year, second season. Um, the last time that we focused on this nuke, we did a split. And the way that we did that split was I was fortunate enough to find the queen. So took her along with, I can't remember if we had swarm cells or starting to swarm cells or not. I have to go back to that last video. But anyways, we found her, and I think she was in the very bottom box, if I remember right, and it was mostly open larvae. And so I took her and put her over there, that one right there, which we'll go take a look at here in just a minute. So that's the mother queen, and then we gave this colony a mated queen, and also gave them a second box. So this box, whoops, this box here that's on the bottom used to be the second box, because remember we moved the bottom box over there. So that was the second box. I added a super, and then this one was just honey. Oop, gotta move my fingers so focus. That top medium was just honey, so that's where I didn't mind putting it above the new box. You want to avoid separating brood for a couple of reasons. First reason, here in our area, especially this time of year, evenings are still colder, and if you're putting a bunch of empty space between the brood, if there's brood up here and brood down here, and then you put this new box, there's a greater chance that the brood's going to chill, because all of a sudden there's all this open space between it. And that'll obviously set your spring buildup back. It can substantially. The second reason being too is that it's an interesting thing that if you put too much space between brood, especially if the queen is either in the very top or the very bottom, the brood that's separated from her will sometimes, the bees with that brood will sometimes create queen cells or emergency cells. So that's just kind of an interesting thing about bee behavior. But anyways, okay, so let's go over here to our so this was the mother queen right here, and if you remember, we've made the split purposefully weak. And I'm thinking there's maybe three frames worth of bees here. The reason we were purposeful in making them weak was because I think we did find swarm cells. If you find swarm cells, you know, you have to remember that swarming for bees is their reproductive urge. So I mean, it's kind of the same way as maybe a terrible illustration, but it's the same way as having, you know, two teenagers dating each other, trying to keep them from crossing the line. It's a very strong urge. How was that for being diplomatic? It's a very strong urge to reproduce, and so once bees have gotten into that mode of wanting to reproduce, wanting to swarm, you got to take some drastic measures to stop them from doing that. So we took more or less all cap brood away, just put her along with a frame of bees and a couple other frames of brood, and then gave her obviously a bunch of empty space. So all I'm checking here right now is see if she's laying. And she is. You probably can't see here on the these are all eggs. This here is capped. Notice the brood area is small simply because we gave her a small amount of bees because I wanted to nip that swarming. Let me see if I can get a picture of these eggs. I wanted to nip that swarming in the bud. Let's see. I don't know if you can see them there. They look just like little grains of rice in the bottom. Oh, here. In the bottom of the cell. I think this is going to be one of those things I'm not going to be able to tell if I got a good, there we go. And that's another point to make as well. We're just going to put this back. It's another point to make is that people a lot of times when they buy a NUC are concerned that they can't find the queen. Queens are very tricky to find sometimes, and so the biggest thing you want to make sure of is if there's eggs, then just leave them alone. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to take a frame or two out, and I'm going to grab a frame of bees and brood from our original colony there, even though this technically is the original queen. I'm going to take a couple of frames out, and I'm going to build these bees up by giving them a couple of frames of bees and brood, and I'm probably going to stagger them. So let's say we do this like that. So there's our two slots for the brood frames we're going to get from the other hive. The other thing too that I've noticed in this particular yard is, I mean, we've got 60 NUCs and 2 or 3 regular colonies here, so they're also stretching out they're having to share their foraging, just coming over here to the original place for our hive. But anyways, the flow has more or less ceased, and so because of that, now we're going to have to switch to making sure that any splits we made have sufficient stores of nectar or honey. And so, okay, so this is our original colony, and as you can see, they're not hurting by any means. And I think probably the rest of the hive will look like that. Actually, interestingly enough, I'm kind of more concerned about checking this one. Oh, for swarm cells again. This is entirely full of honey. And you can see some burr comb here that they've built. So they've got some swarm cups started, but see right here. But I'm not seeing, there's no eggs. There's no eggs in them, so we don't have to worry about them. But I mean, you know, look at the population of this hive. I mean, it's a good colony. So what I'm going to do as well, while I'm here, I'm going to scrape this stuff off. Scrape all that burr comb off. Set this box aside. Oh my gosh, that's got some good maple honey in it. Which, if I didn't have such an aversion to extracting honey, I would probably extract it. Okay, so this is probably one of the most important areas to check for swarm cells. Is between the first and second box, and at first glance everything looks clean. Yeah, so the bottom box still has a very healthy population of bees. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to look for a couple of frames of brood and bees that we can give to our original split. Sure the camera is, yeah. Well, I tell you what, my videography skills are really getting up there. Oh, and in case you didn't know, there was some sarcasm in that. Just a little though, just a little. Look at that beautiful new wax nectar. As I said in previous videos, make sure you test your bees' work. Grab a frame or two of honey for yourself. It's always worth doing. And let's see here. That's all pollen and honey. Pollen. I don't know if you can see kind of the textural difference here between the pollen, which is the yellow, orange, and then you have the nectar, honey. It's just, you know, it always surprises me how quickly bees can build up their resources. All of this comb was empty when we gave them this box, whatever it was, a couple of weeks ago. More pollen, more nectar. Another tip for those of you maybe in just your first, second year of beekeeping, when you have a bunch of bee eyes looking up at you, it's time to smoke them again. They're not really doing it right now. If they start, I'll show you. Okay, beautiful. Here we got a bunch of eggs. Let's see if we can get a shot of that. Those eggs. Look like little grains of rice. Now, we don't want to give, when you're giving a colony, a weaker colony brood or bees to help them build up, you don't want to give them eggs or open larvae. I mean, you can give them some, but you want to avoid that as much as possible and give them capped brood, because capped brood obviously takes much less resources for the bees to utilize. Now, what I might do though is, see here, I'm mitigating between the fact that finding a queen can be incredibly difficult, as I've mentioned, and so I'm going to want to give our original queen and that weaker split a frame of brood and bees, and I'm going to be very fastidious going over that frame, but you can still miss her. So instead, what I'm going to do is, I've decided I'm going to give them this frame, which is honey and some bees. Still a good idea just to take a glance over them, make sure that she's not there. So we're going to give them some bees. Go over here. And what I will probably do as well is redo my frame configuration, because if you remember, we separated the brood. There's brood in this frame, there's brood in this frame. We don't want to separate the brood and risk them getting chilled. So I'm going to put the extra bees and some honey here. And then I'm going to put the extra frame of bees and brood that I'm going to be bringing over just right smack dab in the center. I'm also taking these two frames that I grabbed from here, and I'm going to give them to this colony. What we're also going to do is go down to the second box. So I'm just going to give them this frame real quick, and then we'll get into the second box and see if we can't find some capped brood. I can guarantee you there's capped brood down in the second box, or in the first box. Yeah. Good weight, really good weight. Also a great way to assess if your bees have enough feed is just their weight. For those of you just starting, you might want to know what that feels like. You know, usually if a box this time of year, if you pick up a box and it weighs 25-30 pounds, they've got a good amount of feed in it. There's the queen cage from the queen that we gave them. Now, we already saw eggs, so we know that she's laying. And now all we're doing is searching for capped brood that we can give that other split, which is somewhat lacking. Probably, if anything, just from the new queen establishing her brood nest. Well, what we'll do, we'll just give them a frame of... There is some capped brood on here, but mostly, we'll go this way here real quick and see. Give them another. Pollen, lots and lots of pollen, which is another thing you have to be careful of, because if you have a honey flow going on and the queen gets pollen, or the brood area gets pollen bound or nectar bound, whoops, that can also create the urge for them to swarm. So I've got a couple of, this is just a frame of some capped brood, not that much, just a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and give this one to them. Set it aside there. Pull this one off of my leg. Here's what I mean by, if you see a bunch of little bee eyes looking up at you, see how they're all in a row, then you know it's getting close to time to smoke them again. But anyway, okay, so we'll go back over here and give them this frame of bees. Take our hive tool, which in my case is my fingers, and get those frames tight, especially if you're using new frames with foundation. You want to make sure you get them tight so that they don't build a bunch of burr comb. So we'll come back in about a week. We can have to check those. And all we're going to do now with this one is reassemble it and give them, we're obviously going to be dropping a couple of frames, empty frames here, which once again is going to give the queen some extra room to lay, which would alleviate any swarming impulse that she might be developing. Now this is a new queen, but once again, if you have if you got a strong colony and they're getting nectar bound or pollen bound, here's what I was talking about tightening the frame. Put your hive tool in there, and I don't know if you noticed too, they're starting to kind of fly up at my hand when I'm doing work. There's another good indicator. Go ahead and smoke them again. And the more you work with bees, the more you kind of get to learn just their behaviors, and you'll start to catch on to when they're getting irritated, and you're going to get stung a lot less. A lot less the more experience you get. But I will also tell you, I have my days. I definitely have my days. So go ahead, and this we could actually throw on a fourth box at this point, simply because, like here, I'll show you what I'm feeling. I am feeling in this top box. The weight is just amazing. All right, let's see here. I'd say it has to be at least 3/4 full of honey, if not almost entirely full. Yeah, look at that. It's all capped. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This side is capped. And two, it's looking like, oh, there's the queen. I was gonna say, I was kind of looking like she'd moved her brood nest up here. Where did she go? There she is, there. So, yeah, that's fine, whatever. You know what I mean? It's what I would be tempted to do. That's one of the reasons why I like using all deeps. Now, two, really important thing. I don't know if you noticed how she swung around and likes being on the corners and kind of is trying to hang on, but wind is getting me here. That is really important to watch for, because it's so easy if you see a queen that she'll run to the bottom of the frame or the side of the frame, and it's so much easier to crush her by accident. And so what I like to do is just grab her by her wings. Let's see, where's the viewfinder here? Grab her by her wings, there we go, and put her safely down one of the frames here on the side here, so that the possibility of crushing her is minimized. But yeah, so there's where all the brood went. What I might end up doing is adding that third box, here in between the medium and the deep, simply to have her get pushed down and have empty space to continue to lay. And then as the next flow comes in, which will be most likely either black locust or a blackberry flow, she's going to get pushed down. But once again, we're going to have to keep an eye on making sure that she has somewhere to go, because even though she's a new queen, she'll still get that swarm urge if she's getting crowded. So anyways, so I hope that helps you. So we'll go ahead and put a fourth box on, but I mean 3 boxes full of bees, and then we'll slowly get our other split with the original queen built up. I've got some other queens coming in. I mean, it'd be very easy for us to take any one of these boxes and do a split. I mean, we could even give this a queen, give this a queen, and then just simply put this on top of a deep by itself, so you have 4 hives already from our single overwintered colony. Or you could have 4 hives, all of which should be in a position by mid-May, end of May, to be able to do some honey production as well. So anyways, hope this helps, and we'll catch you later.